The night Lillian Harper disappeared, the air smelled of honeysuckle and coming rain. I remember because I was sitting on the porch steps, picking at the hem of my pajama shorts, waiting for the familiar crunch of gravel that meant Lily was home. She had promised me a Polaroid from the prom photo booth. Her in that dress, sky blue satin with tiny crystals sewn along the neckline like fallen stars. She would look like a mermaid who had decided to walk on land just to make everyone else feel ordinary. At 11:12 p.m., her best friend Marissa texted me a blurry picture, Lily laughing in the back of the limo, Connor's arms slung possessively around her shoulders, his mouth already at her ear, saying something that made her eyes shine. At 11:47 p.m., the porch light flickered. At 11:48 p.m., it flickered again. By midnight, the light stayed on, burning a hole in the dark, and I knew something had broken the world in half. Mom called Connor's phone 17 times. It rang through to voicemail every single time, his lazy drawl saying, "You've reached Connor Ashford, leave a message or catch me on the water." At 2:14 a.m., the sheriff's cruiser pulled up with its lights off so the neighbors wouldn't wake. Deputy Rollins took his hat off before he even reached the door, and I knew then that hope had already left the building. Connor arrived an hour later in a different shirt than the one in Marissa's photo. Hair wet, like he'd showered, eyes red, but dry. He hugged my mother like he was the one who needed comfort and said, "Mrs. Harper, am so sorry. We fought." She got out at the old logging road. I thought she'd cool off and call someone. I never thought. He cried without tears. I watched the performance from the staircase and memorized every perfect lie. They searched for 9 days. Cadaver dogs, dive teams in the quarry, helicopters with heat sensors. Connor was on every news channel wearing his Letterman jacket, voice cracking, begging Lily to come home so we can work this out. The town crowned him tragic prince. GoFundMe pages popped up in his name. Someone started calling him the boy who lost everything. I started keeping a notebook. Page 1. He showered before he came to our house. Page 2. He changed shirts. Page 3. He never once asked where they were searching that day. On day 10, they found the car, driver's door open, Taylor Swift still playing on loop. One silver heel in the mud, like Cinderella running from the wrong kind of prince. Inside the heel, caught on something, 3 strands of hair with roots attached, and a fleck of blood no bigger than a pinhead. Connor said Lily had tripped getting out, must have hit her head on the doorframe. The lab in Richmond was backed up 6 months. The Ashfords made a generous donation to the sheriff's re-election campaign, and suddenly the evidence wasn't enough for DNA, and the file was stamped inactive. I was 13, but I understood bribes before I understood algebra. Mom stopped cooking. Dad started sleeping in his work boots in case they called. They never called. Mom died first, pills and despair, exactly 1 year and 11 days after Lily vanished. Dad followed 18 months later, liver finally giving up the fight. Their joint headstone reads, "Beloved parents of Lillian and Evelyn taken too soon." I visit every Sunday and tell them I'm still working on the taken part. I was 15 when I found Lily's real diary hidden inside the lining of her winter coat in the attic. The last entry, dated the morning of prom. If he tries anything tonight, I'm telling Mom everything. He scares me when he drinks. I should never have let him think he owns me. Underneath, in smaller hurried writing, if something happens, check the hunting cabin. He keeps the key in the fake rock by the back door. I went to the cabin that same week. It was locked from the outside only. Inside, it smelled of mildew and gun oil. The floorboards in the back bedroom were newer than the rest, lighter pine, nailed down wrong. I was too small to pry them up then. Elle took pictures with a disposable camera and waited until Elle was big enough. College was where I learned how to become a ghost. Elle paid cash for everything, used library computers, never posted a selfie. I studied the way predators groom towns the same way they groom girls. Money, charm, fear. Elle took classes on blood spatter patterns, on how bodies decompose in Virginia clay, on how to read tax returns and shell companies. Every professor thought I was brilliant, but cold. They were half right. Graduated summa cum laude and took an internship at the Virginia State Police Cold Case Unit under the name Evelyn Whitlock. Sat 3 cubicles away from the original case file. The evidence bag with the heel was still there, but the hair and blood had gone missing sometime in 2014. I made copies of everything that was left and started filling in the holes myself. In 2017, Beaumont Ashford had his fatal heart attack on the 9th hole of Augusta. The will was read in the mahogany library that smelled of cigars and old money. Connor sat in the front row in a black suit that cost more than most people's cars, already calculating. The lawyer's voice shook when he got to the final clause. To ensure the continuation of the Ashford legacy, the entirety of my estate shall pass to the first of my grandchildren to marry and produce a living heir within 5 years of my death. Should none do so, the fortune will be dissolved and donated to coastal wetland preservation. Connor's cousins panicked. One got married in Vegas that same weekend. Annulled 3 months later when the bride tested positive for cocaine. Another paid a surrogate in Ukraine. Child born premature, didn't survive. Connor decided he would do it properly. Big wedding, perfect wife, guaranteed win. He just needed the right girl. Elle applied to plan the Ashford Foundation Gala. My portfolio had fake references from events that never happened, and photos of floral arrangements I built in my apartment at 2 a.m. I walked into the interview wearing the same perfume Lily had worn, Moonlight Path from Bath & Body Works, discontinued in 2015, but I'd bought every remaining bottle on eBay. Connor inhaled when Elle leaned over to shake his hand and hired me on the spot. Our first date was dinner at Le Chateau, the same restaurant he'd taken Lily the night she died. He ordered for me scallops because Lily loved scallops. I smiled and said, "How thoughtful of you to remember." His pupils dilated like I'd stroked him under the table. He proposed on bended knee on the terrace of his penthouse 11 months later, exactly at sunset, with a ring that had belonged to his great-grandmother. 7 carats, flawless, cold as his hands. I said yes while the city burned orange behind us and thought, got you. Planning the wedding was its own kind of exquisite torture. I chose pewter gray bridesmaids' dresses because that's what the weather had been the night Lily disappeared. I chose calla lilies because they're funeral flowers. I chose the cathedral because the acoustics are perfect for screaming. Chose October 14th because it was the anniversary and because Connor never noticed dates unless they were on a contract. Elle flew to Paris alone for the dress shopping and had the gown hand-dyed to match the exact Pantone of Lily's prom dress. The seamstress cried when I told her why. Elle paid her triple to keep the story to herself. 3 weeks before the wedding, I went back to the hunting cabin with a crowbar and a body bag in the trunk of my rental car. The floorboards came up easy now that I was grown. Underneath, blue satin scraps, a silver heel, and Lily. She was small, curled on her side like she was sleeping. Her skull had a fracture that looked like someone had taken a tire iron to the back of it. I sat on the dirty floor and held her hand bones until sunrise. Then I called the number I'd memorized years ago, Special Agent Rivera, FBL Violent Crimes. They came within 40 minutes. They took her home. Connor never knew. He was too busy tasting cake flavors and practicing his vows in the mirror. The morning of the wedding, I did my own makeup. Elle used the same drugstore eyeliner Lily had stolen from Mom's purse in 2008. Painted my lips the same strawberry pink. Put on the locket she'd worn every day since she was 12. L and H forever. She'd had it engraved when we were kids, teased her about being poor. Inside, Elle placed the micro SD card she'd managed to hide God knows how. Then I walked down the aisle to marry her killer while 550 people smiled and clapped like this was a fairy tale. The ceremony itself was almost funny in its perfection. Connor cried real tears this time, of triumph. The bishop talked about young love and new beginnings. I recited vows I had written at 15 and kept in my jewelry box ever since. I promise to honor you, to cherish you, and to reveal you in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Only Connor heard the emphasis. At the reception, I let him have his first dance. I let him spin me under the chandeliers and whisper filthy things in my ear about the honeymoon. I smiled for every photograph. Elle toasted with champagne I never drank. And at 5:24 p.m., when the quartet lifted their bows for the father-daughter dance, I stepped into Connor's arms one last time. He smelled the same as he had at 17. Equadigio in cruelty. The first violin played the opening notes of Canon in D. Connor's hand, tightened on my waist. Elle leaned in until my lips brushed his ear and said, "Do you remember the last time you heard this song?" He stiffened. Elle pulled back just far enough to smile. "Watch the screens, darling. This one's for Lily." The lights cut to black. 12 screens descended from the ceiling on silent cables. The quartet stopped mid-phrase. 550 faces looked up. Screen 1, Lily waving at the camera in Marissa's limo. 17 and invincible. Screen 2, Lily's senior portrait, the one from the missing posters. Screen 3, the crime scene photo of the heel in the mud. Screen 4, Connor at 18, smirking in his Letterman jacket, arm around Lily like a trophy. Screen 5, the video from the flash drive. Connor's voice, "Say goodbye, baby." Screen 6, the excavation, Lily's skeleton curled in blue satin. Screen 7, the tire iron with hair and tissue still clinging to it, found wrapped in plastic under Connor's childhood bed. Screen 8, the lab report, DNA match, Lillian Elizabeth Harper. Screen 9, Connor's bank records, $500,000 payment to the former sheriff 3 days after Lily disappeared. Screen 10, the locket, open, micro SD glowing. Screen 11, Lily's voice, tiny and fierce. "If you're hearing this, he killed me. Connor Ashford IV. Tell Evie I tried to fight. I love you, little sis." Screen 12, a live feed of the cathedral steps outside, where 37 women in identical sky blue dresses stood holding white roses, faces of every girl Connor's money had silenced over the years. Connor's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. He looked at me, finally saw me, and whispered, "Evie?" Stepped back, veil fluttering like surrender. "Yes, Connor, Evelyn Harper. Lily's little sister. The one you forgot existed." He ran. He made it 6 steps before the groomsmen tackled him. The sound of his tuxedo ripping was the most satisfying thing I'd ever heard. Elle took the microphone and spoke for 7 minutes and 43 seconds, the exact length of the voicemail Connor had left my mother the night Lily died. Elle told them everything. Played the rest of the recordings. I showed the tire iron, the canceled checks, the fake search parties, the threats to Marissa when she tried to speak up. I showed the photo of Connor burning Lily's purse in his backyard fire pit 2 days after prom. When Elle finished, the cathedral was silent, except for Connor sobbing face down on marble. I knelt beside him, lifted his chin with 2 fingers, and said, loud enough for every microphone, "You wanted an heir. You're going to die childless and forgotten. That's the only legacy you'll ever have." Then I stood, turned to the cameras, still rolling for the live stream, and spoke directly to every girl who had ever been told to be quiet, be pretty, be grateful. This is what happens when we stop being polite. I walked out through the river of blue dresses. No one tried to stop me. Some of them were crying. Some of them were clapping. Most of them were calling their daughters to say, "Love you and I'll believe you." Outside, the October sky had finally opened up and was crying the rain we'd waited 15 years for. I stood on the cathedral steps in my sister's dress, veil plastered to my face, and let it wash the makeup off until Elle was just Evie again, 13 years old, holding Lily's hand bones in the dark. Agent Rivera met me at the bottom of the steps with an umbrella and a cup of coffee. "Ready?" she asked. Elle looked back once. Connor was being dragged out in handcuffs, screaming my name like a curse. I smiled, small and sharp and patient. "Yes," I said. "I've been ready since I was 13. They found the tire iron DNA match 3 days later. They found the sheriff's offshore account a week after that. They found the 37 other girls, some living, some not, over the next 18 months. Connor never took a plea. He wanted his day in court. He got life in one instead. I visit Lily every Sunday now. Her real headstone is simple white marble. Lillian Elizabeth Harper, beloved daughter and sister. She fought, she is home. 1991 to 2008. There are always forget-me-nots. Sometimes there are 37 women in blue dresses leaving white roses. Sometimes there are hundreds. And every October 14th, no matter the weather, I dance alone in the cathedral while the quartet plays canon in D. I spin until I'm dizzy, until the blue satin brushes the marble like waves, until Elle can almost feel her hand in mine again. Some weddings end in confetti. Some end in truth. Mine ended in both. And somewhere, wherever 17-year-old girls go when they finally believe them, Lily is laughing in a sky blue dress, kicking off her heels and dancing too.